The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, I don't know if you guys were following how this was supposed to go. This is supposed to be a Commanders Kings stream. And I uploaded the video, the stream, and had it all prepared and was ready to go. And I'm about to send out links to all of the Kings. And I had told you on the podcast that one of the Kings didn't know if his availability was going to fit the show schedule for tonight. So we were kind of waiting a word, you know, whether he was going to be able to do it or not. He wasn't able to do it. So we were going to do a 3-man weave. And then at the last second, another King couldn't make it. So we were just like, you know what? We'll just wait till next week. But I had already come up with this dope concept idea for the show tonight. And so I was like, I'm not going to let this shit go to waste. So I took it from that channel and brought it over here. And so now we're going to discuss this because I've seen some crazy things today. And, you know, based off of the video that I did last night, and I got another video coming tomorrow because I shortchanged y'all last night. You know, we were supposed to talk about the Jaden Daniels effect. I didn't do that. So we're going to do that tomorrow. So what we're going to do tonight, though, is we're going to have a real, candid, frank conversation about this team's running back position and wide receiver position. And I also want to talk about potential cuts that could happen. And would any of them surprise you, right? As a matter of fact, let's lead with that because I want to save the best for last. I'm going to save the best for dessert. Let's get the veggies out of the way because I don't think this is a long conversation that needs to be had that we're about to have about cuts. So shout out to my guy, Jefferson Montenegro. He was on the podcast in the comment section earlier, and he had asked a question about Marshawn Lattimore. I hadn't seen it until after he brought it up, and then I opened up my X, and lo and behold, there it was. A conversation around Marshawn Lattimore potentially being a cut that would save the Commanders roughly $18 million because there's no guarantees apparently in the money that he is to be paid this year, which is an asinine conversation to begin with, which is not one that I even feel like is worth entertaining. However, there are other guys that can be cut, i.e. Jonathan Allen, that will save you. I think Jonathan Allen will save you somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million if you cut him, somewhere in that neighborhood, I believe. And then Andrew Wiley is somewhere in that 6 to 8 million neighborhood, right? I think it's like 7 million or something like that. So there are guys that if you were penny pinching and you were looking to cut a corner or two, that you could axe from the roster and get a savings and move on. Are there any cuts that would surprise you? My answer to that is any cut would surprise me. Any cut that they make or were to make would surprise the hell out of me. I don't see us cutting anybody. We have the least amount of players league-wide signed to our active roster as of right now. Thank you. Okay? We don't have, I looked at our cap situation, right? From a standpoint of who's making the most money and then kind of looking at how it goes all the way down. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share that with y'all right now so y'all can kind of get a sense. Like, we're not paying anybody any real money. There's no reason to cut anybody. But just for purposes of this conversation, I'm going to put it up on the screen so you can see it, so you know that we're not paying anybody real money. And understand that there's no reason to cut anybody, right? Not a single one. So let's take a look at this and let's discuss it. So as you can see, our highest paid player on the team is Deron Payne. We all knew that. Okay, that's not a surprise to anybody unless you haven't been paying attention to that. Anyway, he's going to make $26 million. That's his cap hit. And if you were to cut him, you would eat 25 million. So essentially, there's no savings there. So you wouldn't cut Deron Payne. He's not a guy you would look to cut anyway. That's stupid. But even if you were thinking in that way, there's no savings. Literally, that entire cap hit, that entire number is almost all dead cap money. You wouldn't cut him. There's no value in doing it. McLaurin, $25 million, 25 and a half. You would, if you cut him, you'd save $14 million. Obviously, we're not doing that. We're talking about extension for Terry, not cutting Terry, right? So that's not even something worth discussing. Jonathan Allen is a name that's popped up. You see, he's 30 years old. A guy that is making $22 million. If you cut him, you save $16 million because his dead cap number is $6 million. So you'd save $16 million. That's a lot of money, but we don't need it. All right. If we needed the money, then that would be something you would think about doing or try to trade him or something along those lines. He's still a good football player. Some of you are insane if you think cutting Jonathan Allen is a smart thing to do. Okay. Marshawn Lattimore, as you can see, he's due $18 million. None of it is dead cap money for us. So if we were to cut him, you'd save $18 million. That's not happening. And we'll talk about that in a second. I don't even know if I need to talk about this, but we'll talk about it anyway. Frankie Louvu, and then you just keep going. Look, that's the last guy that's making like really big money, $18 million, right? I consider anything $15 million and over big money. Anything less than that, yeah, you're making solid money, right? Frankie Louvu, $11 million. Obviously, he's going nowhere. Sam Cosmi, $10 million on the books. If you cut him, you would actually be eating $21 million, which, again, that's not happening. Andrew Wiley, $10 million. If you cut him, you'd save roughly 7 and some change, just a shade under 8 million, because his cap hit, his dead cap hit would only be 2.6 million. Meanwhile, he's supposed to make 10.4 mil. So you do the math, that's 7.8 for Andrew Wiley if you were to cut him. Again, there's no reason to cut Andrew Wiley. There's no reason to do it. Right? Dorrance Armstrong making 10 million. Tyler Biotish, 9. And then nobody else is making double figures. All right? We got to be the team with the least amount of guys making double figures in terms of millions per year. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys out of 53. I could be tripping, and there could be other teams that have less than that. I just don't think there's a lot of teams built this way where there aren't more guys making $10 million. And then as you go down the list, Tyler Biotis, Jaden Daniels, I mean, it goes from 26, it goes from 22 to 18, from 18 to 11, from 10 to 9, 9 to 8, and then from 8 down to 4, and nobody else is making more than 8 million, and nobody else is making more than $5 million. The rest of the roster down. Like, guys, we're good. We're not broke. We're not strapped for cash. We don't have to cut anybody. I'm going to be shocked if they cut anybody of note. Like if they decide to cut, Chris Paul, okay, whatever, right? Like, ooh, $1.1 million, like, okay, whatever, right? That's not what I'm talking about. Like if they cut Jeremy Reeves, you'd save 2.6 million, right? I'd be shocked if they did that. They're not going to do that, but I'd be shocked if they did that. Like Percy Butler. If they cut Percy Butler, would it move the needle? No, not really. You'd save some money, but not tripping about it. I'd be shocked if they cut anybody, though. Anybody. I just don't see it happening. All right. So I just thought I'd share that with you. I was going to ask the Kings, would any one cut, any decision to cut someone shock you? I can answer that question. Yeah, anybody getting cut would shock me. Anybody. Andrew Wiley, Jonathan Allen. I'm not even talking about Marshon Lattimore because that's not even a conversation. Who gathered from the conversation at the exit presser from Adam Peters when he talked about Marshon Lattimore's acquisition? Who gathered from that he was a guy that they were contemplating cutting? When he said, hey, we traded for him, we knew he was injured, he never was, fully healthy, can't wait to see him get a full runway in the offseason to work, to be in shape, and not to say that he wasn't in shape here, but to be healthy, get a really good grasp of this defense, can't wait to see what he looks like next year. Anybody get a sense that he was even being contemplated to be cut? Do you know what we gave up to get this man? And you think they're going to be willing to cut him? Again, that was a dumb article written at a time that dumb articles are written, okay? So let me say something that I say quite often that I don't necessarily feel the need to have to say for this particular topic, but because this particular topic warrants this being said, I'm going to now say it. Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. It's lying season. Be careful out there. These streets are not safe. This is the time of the year where people are reaching for articles, for clicks. Okay? And I said this on my podcast. It is a blessing to be my own boss. So I don't have to pen an article that says the one guy that would be a surprise cut for every team, or one guy that can be cut from every team, to save money. I don't have to do that article. I don't have to do that video because it's a waste of time. And then I saw where this whole Marshon Lattimore conversation came from. An article written on NFL.com. Don't know who wrote the article, but obviously somebody has a quota to fill. I don't need a whole paragraph telling me why cutting Marshon Lattimore, would save us money and how he was rated, the worst this or that on PFF and all of that stuff. That's cool. He ain't going anywhere. So you can save it. And again, that's not even a conversation worth entertaining. To me, I'd be more shocked if they cut someone than not shocked if they didn't. Okay? I don't expect anyone to be cut. So that is my expectation. If they cut anybody, I'm going to be shocked. So, yeah, it was Ian Rappaport. I was trying to be nice. I was going to spare him. I wasn't going to put his name out there. But yes, it was Ian Rappaport. And it was bullshit. But again, that's the time of year it is. Take it with a grain of salt. Those guys have jobs to do. I get it. Anyhow, let's get to the dessert now, shall we? There's this conversation that is starting to gain traction within the fan base that I didn't think we would actually get here, because I felt like this conversation started within reason. And you know how it goes. You know how this shit goes. It starts out within reason, and then as you get closer and closer to the draft, this shit becomes untenable. It becomes a rational conversation that you can't have with logical fans because they're losing their shit and they're losing their minds because we're getting close to the draft. And all of these options is like you're getting close to Christmas, and there are all of these different options under the Christmas tree, and potentially all of them could have your name on it, but none of them could have your name on it, right? And so I wanted to have a conversation about what is the bigger need for you as a fan. You watched all 20 games that this team participated in last season, or excuse me, 21 games this team participated in last year. I know I had it right, 20. 17 regular season games, 3 postseason games. You watched all 20 of the games they participated in last season. In your mind's eye, what is the bigger need for this team? Finding wide receiver 2 or replacing RB1? Let me say that again so you can hear me clearly. All right. Let me say that again so you can hear me clearly. I didn't say add a running back. I said replacing RB1. Okay. So which is the bigger need for this team? Finding wide receiver 2 or replacing RB1? So let's break that down before we even get to the conversation. I don't think any of us were satisfied with what we got out of the running back position this season. I think that's a fair assessment. I don't like speaking for you guys, so I don't. But I think it's a fair assumption for me to make that none of us were. Our quarterback led our team in rushing. That's not okay. And that's not a flex that I'm looking to have next year or any other year of his career for that matter. I don't want him leading us in rushing ever again. He can run for 1,000 yards at some point in his career. Good. The running back needs to have 1,400 yards rushing then. That's not a flex that I'm looking to have ever again. So I think it's a fair assumption to say that we all were disappointed with the output from the running back position this year. That's okay, right? There were injuries to our top 2 running backs. You know, the offensive line was in flux late in the season. Yada, yada, yada. We could get to all of the reasons as to why that happened, but we all have been saying for years that we needed a guy with speed in the backfield at some point, right? It is only the last 2 to 3 weeks, though, that there's a conversation that's starting to happen. And now I think it's reached a crescendo where there's this assumption that we're going to replace Brian Robinson as our RB1. Now, somebody had brought up yesterday, I think during my stream, that JP Finley was on X. He might have been in Spaces, or he might have just been having one of those mailbag situations where he's answering questions. And whatever the case may be, he said that he expects there to be a new RB1 come next season. And he kind of said it matter-of-factly. And, you know, Rio, and I was hoping to have this conversation with the Kings because Rio was like, indeed, water is wet, as if this is a foregone conclusion. I know Rio loves Omarion Hampton, and he would love to see us draft him. He won't be there. Let me be the first to make sure that we're all on the same page. He won't be there at 29, guys. There are at least 4 running back needy teams ahead of us in the draft. And by the way, these are teams that are not afraid to pick a first-round running back, by the way. Okay. Now, you know, a team like Minnesota hasn't probably picked a first-round running back since Adrian Peterson, but they're not afraid to do so. And we know the Steelers aren't afraid to do so because the last time they drafted a running back, it was in the first round in Najee Harris, and they're not going to re-sign him, and they need a running back. They're going to draft one in the first round. Trust me. Okay. So if you think Genty is going to get out of the top 10, probably need to wash your face and get your mind right. If he does somehow make it out of the top 10, good for him. He's not making it out of the top 15. And I assure you, wherever the Steelers are, Omarion Hampton probably won't make it past them. But in the event that he does, there's another team and another team that could probably use a running back. Anyway, long story short, I know Rio wants Omarion Hampton. I don't think he's going to be there. But when this process started, right? When our season ended, I don't remember the conversation being, we got to go get us a lead tailback. We have to go find us a brand new running back. Brian Robinson is done. I don't remember that being a conversation. I don't. Did I miss something? Maybe I did. Now, did he leave some meat on the bone? Sure. But as I laid out for you throughout the tail end of the season, it wasn't all his fault. This offensive line wasn't moving people. We watched the Saints film together. It was a shit show. We were getting destroyed and devoured up front. And that wasn't the only game that was happening. Now, look, there are times where I'm like, that play was blocked for 5 and he only got 3 or he got 2. And you're like, that's not good enough. Or that play was blocked for 2 or 3 and he got none, or a loss of 1, which you can't have. And I am aware of that. I am aware. And I'm not telling you that I don't want a more dynamic back. I've been screaming for one for years. Okay. But this narrative. So are you guys trying to tell me, and I'm not talking to everybody, I'm only talking to the people that feel like Brian Robinson Jr. is not capable of being one of your backs that you're splitting carries with. Okay? Because if you draft an Omarion Hampton, you don't need Brian Robinson Jr. You don't need him. He can handle the first and second down duties, and then you can still give third downs to Austin Eckler. There's no reason for Brian Robinson Jr. to be on the field if you draft a guy like Genty or a guy like Omarion Hampton. There's no need for a Brian Robinson Jr. He becomes obsolete. And again, I'm not against drafting one of those guys. Don't get me wrong. If that's what they decide to do, so be it. I didn't take from the end of the season. I didn't get this. And you know, I'm big on trying to read people, trying to get a sense of where the staff stands, how they feel about a guy. I told y'all that they weren't feeling. And I told you DQ was pissed off at Luke McCaffrey. How much did Luke play after that? I told y'all that. Not very much. Not very much. I told you they weren't happy. Because you can tell when things are said and how it's said, they're not happy, right? You can tell when they're not happy with somebody. They weren't happy with Ben Sinnott. He missed assignments. You could tell they weren't happy, and you saw that reflected in how often he was put on the field. I never got a sense that they weren't happy with B-Rob. Were they happy with the production? No. But I can tell you, the head coach bringing you in the office, watching film with you and having to remind you of who you are, that's not necessarily a great indictment on where you are mentally if they feel the need to have to remind you, hey, this is who you are. This is what you do. Get back to that. But at the same token, I didn't take it as we got to go get us a new running back altogether. Now, with that said, I'm open to anything, but I went into this process thinking, and this is something that I didn't consider until just 2 weeks ago. I started thinking about this from a different perspective. Brian Robinson Jr. is going into the last year of his rookie contract. Right now, if I asked you to a man, are you re-signing Brian Robinson Jr. when his contract expires next year? I think most fans would say no. And I'm okay with that. So if that's the thought process, knowing that he's only got 1 year left, drafting his replacement would make sense this year. Again, I get that. But also, he does have 1 year left on his contract. Are you in a position to draft his replacement now when you don't necessarily need his replacement now? Or are you in a better position to draft a change of pace complement to him and then draft his replacement next year? Again, it's just a conversation worth having. Now, again, if they decide to draft his replacement this year, I'm all for it. Got no issues with it. But in my mind, it wasn't about drafting a replacement for Brian Robinson. It was about drafting a complement to him. I always envisioned what they were looking to do at the running back position to be a lot like Detroit. Now, Brian Robinson Jr. is not, I repeat, not David Montgomery, but his style is similar to his. Montgomery is a much more dynamic power back than Brian Robinson Jr. I love David Montgomery coming out of Iowa State because he's got phone booth quickness. He can make guys miss. His phone booth agility is what I called it, is second to none when he was coming out of Iowa State. He could make guys miss in a phone booth, right? That's not Brian Robinson Jr. You know, he is a physical guy. He can get yards after contact, but he doesn't have a ton of agility, right? He's a what I call robotic runner in terms of how he cuts, right? There's not a lot of fluidity with which he moves. It's sort of like a robot, right? When he runs, when we give him the ball on outside zone, there's no fluidity to him getting to the edge. It's straight and then stop and then cut. If you've ever seen Grandma's Boy, I forgot the name of the dude where he talks in the robot voice. You cannot see me. I forgot his name, but that's kind of how I think about Brian Robinson Jr. and his running style. You are turd nuggets, right? He runs kind of robotic a bit. But if you give him space, he can be dynamic. We've seen this. Think first Giants game of the season when he set a career high. He was dominant that game. He was the best player on the field, not named Jaden Daniels that day, right? Rushed for 130 yards, I believe. But there were 2 runs in there that pissed us all off as fans because we thought they both should have been touchdowns. He does not have that gear, and that's okay. That's okay. We know what he is, and we know what he ain't. This is why you need the change of pace guy, because he is supposed to have that gear that allows you to put him in the game after Brian Robinson Jr. has come in and he's hit you with the curveball, the changeup, you know what I'm saying, the split finger, right? And all of a sudden, you've been getting all this off speed, and then here comes the fastball. Oh, shit. You've been seeing a steady diet at 83, 87, 85, and here comes 98. Damn. Wasn't ready for that. That's what I envisioned. Apparently, I'm in the minority, it feels like. Maybe I'm not. Maybe just the people that I see commenting are, again, and this is the same thing in the Kirk Cousins situation. The majority of people wanted him back, but the minority was louder. They were louder. Maybe that's the situation here. But I struggle. So are you guys trying to tell me Brian Robinson Jr. is trash? I wouldn't even say mid, because that's an easy out for y'all. Yeah, he's mid. And I don't even think he's mid. I think he's above average. But he's above average for what he brings to the table. He has limitations. We knew that when we drafted him. We knew he didn't have speed. We knew he didn't have tremendous agility. There's a reason that 800 running backs were ahead of him on the depth chart at Alabama. There was a reason that every time he thought it was going to be his turn, some other guy came and they put him above Brian Robinson Jr. on the depth chart. And you got to give him credit for perseverance and sticking around and not transferring and going somewhere else and waiting his turn. And it paid off. But there was a reason that 800 guys paraded in front of him for 5 years and he had to wait and wait and wait and wait. But you can't tell me that he's not a quality NFL running back, though. I can't get on board with that. So let me ask you this. What's more important to the success of this team next year? Finding wide receiver 2 or replacing RB1? That's what I want to know from y'all tonight. And for those of you who don't watch this live but see it on playback, I want you to answer it down in the comment section. What's more important? And I want a reason why. It's not just good enough to tell me, yeah, get RB1, replace RB1. Why? I'm going to give you my answer and I'm going to tell you why I feel the way that I feel tonight. Okay? So now, again, this conversation we're having is in a vacuum. You already know how I feel and what I think is the most important need this offseason. So that's not what this conversation is about. I didn't ask you what the biggest need this team has going into the offseason. I've already told you it's left tackle for me. But I don't know if the Brandon Coleman experiment is done or not. So I can't speak to whether or not they're done with him at left tackle, willing to move him to right guard or left guard or even right tackle for that matter. I don't know where their mind is on Brandon Coleman. If it were up to me, I would replace him at left tackle, move him over to either right tackle or left guard, and would keep the party going. That's the most important thing for me. Protecting your most valuable asset, which is 5. However, we're talking about these two entities right now. So we're in a vacuum and we're just talking about running back and receiver. Finding wide receiver 2 to complement Terry McLaurin in this past game, or replacing, not complementing Brian Robinson Jr. in the backfield, replacing him in the draft. Which is more important? So an argument could be made for either one. But here's what I'll tell you. My choice is finding wide receiver 2. I think you could have already deduced that from some of the other videos that I've posted, some of the conversations we've already had. But let me explain myself further. I can't ask you to do something that I wouldn't require of myself, right? Can't just tell you, give me find wide receiver 2 as my answer and not elaborate. I asked you to do the same. So I'm going to do that. I think about this offense and how it's built and set up. And I think about a lot of the games we won this season. Hell, even some of the games we lost. And I think about how differently they would have been had we added in a dynamic running back, or if we would have added a legitimate number 2 wide receiver, and which would have impacted the game more. And while it's not fair, because it's not as simple as, well, the running back position only got 12 carries in this game, so a dynamic running back wouldn't have changed anything. Because if you had a guy back there that was a difference maker, you'd give him the ball more than 12 times, or you give it to him more than 9 times. You would hope they wouldn't forget about him. But you have to remember who your offensive coordinator is. It's the same guy that said he really values DQ because he keeps him grounded and forces him to run the football. Cliff Kingsbury really doesn't want to run the football, okay? And that was evident against Philadelphia because we didn't even try to run the ball against the Eagles in that championship game. And that is not the reason why that game went off the rails. And anybody that watched that game and was actually watching for intent purposes, not just watching the box score or seeing the final score of the game and saying, well, you didn't run the ball and see what happened. We came out with intent to not run against Philadelphia as if they were the most dominant run defense in the league since the 2000 Ravens or some shit. They're not even as good as the Bucks are, against the run. And you would have thought that's who we were playing against. We knew we weren't running against the Bucks in Wild Card Weekend, and we still tried anyway. We didn't even try against Philadelphia. I'm not sure if having a dynamic back helps you in games in which your offensive line is getting their ass whooped. Again, I don't know what a dynamic back would have done against the New Orleans Saints that day because our offensive line got their dicks put in the dirt. I don't give a damn if you had prime Adrian Peterson, Barry Sanders. You weren't doing shit that day. I don't know what you would have done against Tampa Bay, because they were kicking our offensive line's ass in that wild card game up front. Hell, remember the third down play Jaden had to run? Where he has to stiff arm Kalijah Kancey? That's the shit that was happening all game. Kalijah Kancey looked like Aaron Donald. Here's what I do know, though. There were games this season where it would have been very helpful to have a more dynamic number 2 receiver than Noah Brown, than De'Ami Brown, than Luke McCaffrey, Olamide Zaccheaus, or whomever the hell we were trotting out there at the time at number 2 wide receiver. I'll give you some examples. The Bears game. Jayden Daniels is gutting through an injury that he suffered the week before. We didn't even know if he was going to play or not. Hadn't practiced all week. He shows up. He gives a Herculean effort. He's throwing dots to Noah Brown, and how many of them did he drop that day? It was a miracle, obviously, as we know, that we didn't lose the game. And it was so bad that day, if you recall, that when Noah Brown caught the Hail Mary, we were all screaming, "You better not drop that bitch," because he had dropped like 3-4 passes that day. How about the Steelers game? Jayden was not as sharp as that day. He wasn't. And if he hits Luke McCaffrey from his own end zone, probably game over and we win. But he missed. But he also hit a lot of guys in that game, and they dropped the football. It was a rough day, right? If I'm not mistaken, that was the game, I think, that Noah Brown got injured. I think. I could be wrong about that. I don't think he got hurt against Dallas. Anyway, would have been nice to have another. They were playing man coverage. Jayden said they didn't do anything special. They just played man coverage. And they tried to blitz in front of it. right? And play man coverage behind it. And if you've got a better number 2 receiver, guess what? You're able to expose that. Same thing could be said against the Eagles the following week or the Cowboys the week after that. How many times did we throw the ball to Noah Brown while he was being blanketed by some cornerback we never heard of? Anwar Thomas or some shit. Some dude that was doing some mime shit to us. The hell? Who is this bum? And why is he locking up our number 2 receiver? I don't know. I can just tell you this. With the way Cliff Kingsbury wants to call offense, and with the way the NFL, look, don't allow Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry to fool you. That's not how this league works. We don't have either one of those offensive lines, by the way. Okay. Unless this offensive line transforms into a top 5 run blocking, road grading unit, you're not rushing for 1,800 yards behind this offensive line. So you can go get an Amarian Hampton, great. And he'll be an upgrade over Brian Robinson, sure. How much of an upgrade? How much is he going to be fed the football? Because Cliff Kingsbury wants to throw the ball. And I'm not telling you that Jaden's about to start dropping back and throwing it 40 times, because that's not what we do. But what I am telling you is he's going to throw the ball 22 to 32 times every week. Every week. I can't assure you that our lead tailback is going to get 18 carries every week. I can't guarantee you that. But I can guarantee you that our quarterback is going to throw the ball more than 20 times every game. And as we all know, ain't but 6 or 7 of them hoes going to Terry. So now you got to figure out, if he throws it 28 times, who the other 21 attempts going to? Who the other 19 attempts going to if Terry's got 9 targets? I'm good on John Bates. I can't speak for you. I'm good on OZ. I'm good on, Noah Brown. I'm good on that shit. Bottom line is, in this offense, for this team, finding a complement to Terry McLaurin is more important than finding a replacement to RB1. Now, we need, and this has to happen, and it will, we need a complement to RB1. But a replacement, a full-blown, hey, Brian Robinson, you've been demoted to RB3. That's essentially what you're doing if you take RB1, is you're demoting Brian Robinson Jr. to RB3 because, again, he ain't the next man off the bench. You draft a first-round running back, you draft a second-round running back. That's the end of Brian Robinson Jr. In my mind, unless you draft a 205-pound speed back that isn't ready to carry the load, then okay, all right, I see what you did there, right? Like Quinshawn Judkins, for instance. I don't think he's an every down back. You draft him in the second round, though. He's not going to be there in the third round. Quinshawn Judkins is a guy that I would draft, right? Because he's a complement to Brian Robinson Jr. He's a home run threat every time he touches the football. He's not a every down, give it to him, 20 times a game type dude. He's more of an Austin Eckler, but a more dynamic version of him, right? Now, can B-Rob still be third down, pass pro, all that stuff? Sure, he's gotten better at that. But if you draft RB1 to play in front of him, he's behind Austin Eckler, too, more likely than not. There's still a place on the roster for him, but there's not as much of a need. I personally feel like with the way this offense operates and how you can open up things for others, if You get a legit number 2 that can take coverage away from Terry. Now Terry gets to eat. Now Zach Ertz gets to eat even more, right? Or whomever we got at tight end gets to eat even more. Think about having a legitimate number 2 and how that can lighten up boxes. All of a sudden, hey, you can't bring a safety down. You can't say, hey, we're good on this side. Just shade your safety over the Terry side. You can play single high safety against Washington. All you got to do is shade your safety. That's what the Eagles were doing. The Eagles were playing. They were at times he was triple team. They got somebody inside watching him. They got a guy, the corner outside, and they got a safety over the top. They ain't got to worry about number 2. Who the hell is number 2? And why do I care? You get a number 2 wide receiver that's legit, that forces defenses to have to back up. And all of a sudden, you could see the run game start to pop. You could see some opportunities start to arise. And it go vice versa. You start to get some good hits in the run game. Now they got to bring somebody up into the box to stop it. And now you may get some opportunities down the field. But once again, if you don't have number 2 receiver, but you go get a replacement for number 1, but you don't have a legit number 2, guess what that's going to do? They can bring the extra defender down in the box, but I can still double team Terry's ass. And I don't give a shit about who's number 2 because you don't have one that I respect. So again, while you can affect the game, I still can double team your best receiver. And what? You get the other receiver. Now you got to pay attention to both guys, because if you try to double Terry and you don't double the other receiver, if he's really good, if he's worth the damn, he should be able to eat. If you're paying attention to both safeties, now you got to keep 2 safeties and middle of the field is open. Now your tight end can eat. Now the run game can start to matriculate the ball down the field because it's one defender less in the box. So again, for me, wide receiver 2 is more important than replacing RB1. RB1 is already on the roster for now, but finding a complement to RB1 is of equal or greater importance, right, to me, than replacing him. Finding RB or wide receiver 2 supersedes all of that. You have to find a home run threat at the running back position. You have to. That's not optional. But it doesn't have to be a guy that replaces Brian Robinson Jr. It could be a guy that complements him. That's what I thought this was supposed to be. How we ended up replacing him, how we ended up saying Brian Robinson Jr. won't be your starter next year. What? When that happened? Again, he only has 1 year left, and I get it. I respect that. So if you're looking ahead to the future, which you should be, and you decide that, hey, we should probably go ahead and draft his replacement now, so we don't have to worry about it next year. This is a deep running back class. Let's go ahead and get it done. Okay, I'm cool with that. I got no issues with that. But you better, I told y'all yesterday, you better find wide receiver 2. That's all I know. And to me, that needs to happen in free agency. The running back is in the draft. Ain't nobody looking for no running back in free agency. To hell with that. The running back is in the draft. I think we can all agree on that. But the receiver, that needs to be number 2. Receiver 2 needs to be in free agency. Again, that doesn't prohibit you from drafting a wide receiver in the second round. Hell, even in the first round, if that tickles your fancy. That shouldn't stop you. But I don't want to put the weight of having to be the number 2 guy, having to produce 700-800 yards in your first season in the NFL. I don't want to put that weight on a young guy because we expecting big things next season. We expecting big things next season. Look, do you understand what last season did, this past season just did? It's got us talking reckless. There's not and this is why I talked about this a couple shows ago when I said anybody that is expecting a sophomore slump from this team, from Jaden Daniels, they're not wrong, because conventional wisdom says, how much better can you be than the NFC Championship game? There's only one more thing you can do. Well, 2, actually, go to the Super Bowl, not win it, or go to the Super Bowl and win it. But there's only one more place you can go if you're going up, and that's the Super Bowl. So how much better can you possibly be from that standpoint? From a wins and losses standpoint, we didn't win the division. We won 12 games. That's a lot of games, guys. If anybody knows, it's us having not won more than 10 games in a season since 1991. If any fan base knows how hard it is to win more than 10 games, it's us. So 12's a hell of a lot of games. But that's a lot of games. Let me say it again. That's a lot of wins. The only thing you can do to top that is to win 13, 14, 15, 16, or 17. So conventional wisdom says you can't be better than you were last year. Your schedule's going to be tougher. You're going to have a target on your back now. Teams are getting up for you now. You're no longer a team that everyone's circling on the schedule and saying, hey, we should win that game. Walking in and taking us lightly. Now teams are getting up for us. Oh, they got that young quarterback. Let's see what he's all about. Everybody's going to want to take their shot at Jaden. So if you want to somehow exceed what we did last year, because the expectations are through the roof now, which is somewhat unfair to this group, because again, it's a great problem to have. But again, we started a recalibration last year. We have no one. I just showed you the players that we're paying on the roster and how much money we're paying. No one. We have nothing. This is why I can't sit here and let guys like LB talk about how you guys had talent. And what are you talking about? Look at the roster. What are you talking about? What talent? And not to demean the guys that are talented, but when you talk about it in relative terms to the rest of the league, this is a bottom half of the league roster we're talking about here. Don't fool yourselves. It was made good by Jaden Daniels. That's what happened last year. He covered up, as a GM said, an anonymous GM said in an ESPN article, he covered up for a lot of our sins. You damn right he did. Amen. We have a lot of building to do. A lot of it. So once again, if you want to maximize what this team needs to do, got to start with the trenches. I've already said that, but if we're just talking about these two positions, go get me the receiver, please. Go get me the receiver. In free agency. Because I don't want to ask a young guy to come in here and have to produce 600, 700, 800 yards in his rookie season. Again, a lot of y'all think that this is easy, that every rookie receiver is supposed to come into the league and immediately prove huge dividends. That is not how this works, guys. We're not drafting in the top 5. We're not drafting in the top 10. Those days are over. We're not drafting in the top 15. You're not getting a Brian Thomas Jr. You're not getting a Malik Neighbors here, guys. That's not what's happening. How many yards did Rome Odunze have last year? I'm actually curious. How many yards receiving did Rome Odunze have in his rookie season? He had 734 yards receiving as a rookie. He was a top 10 pick. How many yards receiving did Marvin Harrison Jr. have? He had 885 yards receiving as the number one guy in Arizona. All right. Conversely, let's see who was a second round pick last year at receiver. Let's look at the draft last year, 2024 NFL draft class. See what we can find. And I may look like a dumbass after doing this. I don't care. Let's see. See what we got. All right, Keon Coleman. This is a great one to pull here. Keon Coleman. First pick of the second round was Keon Coleman. How many receiving yards did Keon Coleman have in his rookie season? 556 for Keon Coleman. 556. All right. Let's keep going. I'm going to do one or two more. I don't want to bore you with this. All right. So that was Xavier Legette. Let's just see what he did. And he's a first round pick, right? Xavier Legette was a first round pick. Let's see what he did. How many receiving yards did Xavier Legette have in his rookie season? 497. So you get where I'm going with this. Those were first round. That was a first round pick. Keon Coleman was damn near a first round pick. That's where we'll be drafting, folks. Right in that 32, 33 range. We're at 29. Okay. So it's right there. Right. I don't want to ask one of these young boys to come in here and have to do something that they're not ready to do. I don't want to do that. That's why the receiver 2 needs to be a veteran who has done it in the league, that has proven abilities that we can rely on. And again, just for 1 year, you can draft that same Xavier Legette, that same Keon Coleman, have him develop under wide receiver 2, and then next year, have that guy pushed into that role. He should be more prepared at that time, right? Luke McCaffrey should be ready to be wide receiver 3 by year 3, right? That's the hope. If you do this right, Terry as your 1, draft a receiver this year. He's ready to be your 2 in 2026. Luke should be ready to be a legit receiver 3 by 2026. And then you complement those guys. I'd sign Tutu Atwell this year to a 2-year deal, and he'd be receiver 4 in that equation. But again, you get my drift. You understand where I'm going here. To me, wide receiver 2, more important than replacing. We have more pressing needs than to be hunting RB1. Understand? Like, we have a 3rd round pick. I think you can find a complimentary back in the 3rd round this year with all the talent that exists. Somebody with speed, with wheels, that can catch it out of the backfield, but on any given play, he can hit the home run. I can't wait to watch the combine to see these backs. Because I bet you I'm going to watch this combine and they're going to be 4 or 5 guys, and I'm like, yeah, he looks like the kind of guy that could help us a lot. And it won't be a guy that's going in the 1st, 2nd, or hell, even the 3rd round potentially. We don't have a 4th round pick, but I think we're going to have one after we trade back out of the 1st round altogether. But that's another conversation for another day, right? Ultimately, with your 1st round pick or your 2nd round pick, ideally you would like to come away with a corner, edge rusher, receiver, somebody of that ilk, right? You would love to come away with something like that. One of those, as we call them, premium positions. Running back is not a premium position. You do not have to spend a 1st round pick on a running back. Again, if one should fall into your lap that you absolutely love, please, by all means, knock yourself out. But I actually heard somebody say, we should go get Cam Scatterbo. What the fuck are you talking about? Cam Scatterbo? What? You hustling backwards. Have you lost your damn mind? That's the type of shit I'm talking about. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section. CJ Shoots photo. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I believe or hope we get our a day 2 rookie running back, rounds 2 and 3. Exactly. I expect that. Personally, I don't expect them to take a running back in the first round. None of the guys that you guys are foaming at the mouth to draft in the first, they won't be there. Like, you don't have to spend a first round pick on Travion Henderson. Newsflash, just so you know. He'll be there in the second round. Will he be there at 58 where we draft, I believe? I don't know about that. He should be. Again, his teammate is better than him. Quinshawn Judkins is better than him. Just so we're clear, okay? Don't hate me. I'm just a messenger, okay? Quinshawn Judkins is better than Travion Henderson. Period. So, again, I've seen people like, yeah, Travion Henderson at 29. Why? 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 When you need corner. And again, we're going to draft a corner. I mean, we're going to sign a corner in free agency more likely than not. You can always, you can never have enough corners. You can never have enough edge rushers. No such thing. Right now, we don't have enough edge rushers, let alone having too many. There's no such thing. You can't have enough corners. No such thing. I think the day 2, even a day 3, because we don't have a fourth, I'm hesitant to say that a day 3 running back exists for us. If we had a 4th round pick, I would be more inclined to be like, or a 4th round pick, right? Your first pick of day 3 is a running back. I think it's more 3rd round. Right now, what it feels like to me, a running back in the 3rd round feels real to me. Because remember, that's not our 3rd round pick. That's the Dolphins' 3rd round pick. So that's higher in the 3rd round. It feels more real that a 3rd round running back is there for the Commanders to take, and that's when they spend the pick. And that's what it feels like it should be. That's what it feels like it should be. Navy Ramjet, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, blessings to you and the family. Likewise, Navy Ramjet. How's the little one? How's she doing? Our little good luck charm. Says, I don't understand the dump JA talk. You need leaders, not a bad player. We aren't cap strapped. Why create a new hole? Add fewer reps will improve play. I agree wholeheartedly. I get it that, you know, anytime we talk about a trade for this team, he's the first name that we throw in the mix. Hey, trade Jonathan Allen, right? Throw Jonathan Allen in the trade, right? You know, natural fan progression, right? When you feel like you're done with an item, throw him in the trade. You know, don't need him anymore. Last time I checked, we don't really have a real presence inside. You could say, well, he's a part of that. Touche. If that's how you feel, touche. But I can tell you what won't happen if you get rid of him. It gets better. That won't happen. It won't get better by moving on from Jonathan Allen. I can assure you of that. So he's not a part of the problem. if there is a such thing here. Like we don't have problems right now. We have holes, but we don't have like a problem per se with, you know, as far as the roster is concerned. We have issues like stopping the run. That's a specific problem. But when you talk about like, we got to get rid of this guy, or we got to do this, he's a part of the solution. At least for the next year. While he's got 1 year left on his contract, he's a part of the solution. You're already paying him $22 million. Yeah, you can save 16. I'm aware. Okay, we talked about that. But you don't need the $16 million. Not bad enough to cut a guy that can help you. And oh, by the way, we don't have a lot of talent at defensive tackle. We've had this conversation already. It's Jonathan Allen. It's Daron Payne. It's Johnny Newton. And I'll let you fill in the blank. Who's the next guy? Sheldon Day? Carl Davis? Vial Fioco? You tell me. Yeah. So cutting Jonathan Allen doesn't make a ton of sense. You do realize Carl Davis played a lot of meaningful snaps in the NFC Championship game, right? We are clear on this, correct? Okay. Yeah. He's going nowhere, by the way. That's not something we have to worry about. I will be shocked if he gets cut. Rob you. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Rob you writes, we need a Devin Achane. Yes, that is exactly what we need. Yes. Yes. Man, what are you doing? It's halftime. Yes, this is my favorite time of the game. That's exactly what we need. And he's not a lead back. He's a guy that you give it to 8 to 12 times, whether you're throwing it to him out of the backfield or you hand it to him. Same thing, Austin Eckler role, right? But he's dynamic when he touches it. Now, could Miami push him into that role? I think they just moved on from Raheem Mostert. They could push him into that role this year, potentially. But that's the kind of guy we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for. He was a second-round pick, though. He was a second-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. But he would be a great compliment to a B-Rob. Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. Daily Grind. Been a member for 41 months. Salute to you, my friend, who writes, as much as I want to go crazy in free agency, I know AP will slow roll this building process. I hate to say it, Lou, but a regression is in order. In Chef P, I trust. I don't subscribe to that, but again, I understand that there's not much room for growth with this team in terms of, like, the roster can grow and we could feel better about our team on paper, but we won 12 games and we went to the NFC Championship game last year. Our schedule is going to be tougher. There are real expectations. It's easy to go out and win games. That's the thing. If you ask me right now, if you said, Louie T, what is the one thing that you're most looking forward to from an organizational standpoint, a team standpoint this year? Without hesitation, I would tell you, I want to see how we handle the expectation of being the fourth best, having the fourth best odds in the NFC to make it to the Super Bowl. Sixth best in the NFL. I want to see I want to see how we handle the expectation of being the hunted instead of the hunter, right? Now, we still aren't the top dog. That's the Philadelphia Eagles. So we still are the hunter. But you'd be a damn fool to think that Detroit ain't got a target on our back. Whenever it is we see Detroit, you don't think they're going to want to smack the dog shit out of us? You saw what they did to Dallas last year. when they were looking for some get back? You don't think for 1 second Detroit ain't gonna try to kick the living dog shit out of us when they see us? You got another thing coming. You got another thing coming. You don't think Chicago is gonna? We wrecked their season. You don't think Chicago's gonna want to put belt to ass when they see us? It's on site for Chicago. I need y'all to be on y'all best behavior because Bears fans will be coming out of the woodworks that week and they're going to be trolling at uncontrollable levels. You need to be prepared. When we play Denver, you don't think Broncos fans are all of a sudden going to show up and be talking that Bo Nick shit? It's levels to this. And our guys at the very top, we're now a wanted team because of it. So naturally, a regression is in order. I'm not signing up for that shit, though. It's going to have to happen to me for me to believe it. But I understand it. I get it. And I already told y'all, which is why I did the video yesterday, don't expect all of these big name free agents to be coming up to Washington. He's going to continue to build this thing the way he started building it last year. Slowly, but surely, right? He's acting like the tortoise. He ain't looking to be the hare. He being a tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race. What we did last year forces you to want to skip steps, Rivera style. I don't think he's going to do that. He's aware of the urgency of Jaden Daniels' rookie contract. He's aware. But he's also keeping the big picture. And this is why it's important to have, because head coaches are supposed to be focused on the here and now, which is why you can't have your head coach be your GM, which is why that whole Rivera thing was doomed to fail from the jump, because you can't have a guy that's supposed to be focused on the now, also focused on big picture. You can't ask a coach to do that, because if they don't win now, ain't no big picture for the coach. He fired. So I got a feeling that some of y'all think this is going to, there's a comment that someone left where they named like all the players that they wanted. He named like 2 trades and like probably 5 of the top 10 free agents in free agency. Yeah. And he made this list with a straight face. Yeah, this is what I think a good offseason looks like. He's like, Myles Garrett, trade for Myles Garrett, trade for Garrett Wilson, or, it was something to that effect, or go get Jimmy Ward, go get, this corner, go get this running back, go get this edge rusher. And I'm like, bro, do you understand what you're asking them to do? That's asinine. But there's a lot of fans that kind of think that way. Philly 52_59. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, 4 commanders make more than the highest paid Eagle. I'd have to see that to believe that. I'd have to see that to believe that, because I know for a fact A.J. Brown just signed an extension for $33 million a year. Now, I don't know what the base salary that he has is. And a lot of those guys just signed contracts. I know the Eagles fiscally have a lot of guys on rookie contracts, so they're in a really good spot financially. But I'm going to guess right now that I'm just trying to think. I'm going to guess that right now the Eagles have more than 8 guys. All we have are 8 guys making double digits. I got to believe the Eagles have more than 8 guys making double digit millions of dollars per year on average. That's going to count against the cap. I got to believe Lane Johnson's making double digits. I got to believe Jordan Mailata, because he got an extension, is making double digits on the offensive line. I think Landon Dickerson just got paid not too long ago. Got to believe he's making double digits on the offensive. Saquon Barkley's definitely making double digits. Jalen Hurts is making double digits, right? That's 5 right there. I mean, again, I could be wrong about this. A.J. Brown's got to be making double digits. Devontae Smith's got to be making double digits. That's 7. Darius Slay has to be making double digits. That's 8. I don't know what CJ. I don't think he's making double digits. He doesn't strike me as a double digit guy. You're gonna have to pay Zach Bond. Brandon Graham, I don't know if he's making double digits or not. I would like to think that he is. At this stage of his career, he may not be, but I'd like to think that he is. Did I miss anybody? I don't think I did. I think that's all of the guys. And then the rest of them are probably young, still on a rookie deal. Bryce Huff is probably making double digits. That was a bad deal. That's probably the last guy if I had to guess right now. That's still more than the 8 that we have. That's for certain. But I could be wrong. And a lot of teams, you know, cap situation looks like ours. Doesn't feel like it, though. And it's not just that, you know, we got guys, you know, 3 guys in the 20s, a guy at 18, and then a bunch of dudes at 10. It's the fact that after you get from Jaden Daniels, I think at 8 million, 8 and some change, you go all the way to 4 million, and nobody else is making more than 4 million. And it's just a bunch of dudes at that point. But anyway, I digress. Stephen Dent, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, hey, Lou, wide receiver 2 because B-Rob and trash and O-line upgrades make him more than serviceable. B-Rob lays the wood in pass pro. Wide receiver 2 opens up the field for the run. I just think I agree with all of that. You upgrade the offensive line, and B-Rob is going to be just fine. Again, you weren't like, this conversation wasn't even a thing before he got injured and the offensive line started getting injured. The only thing we were saying is we needed a speed back to complement him. It wasn't until the late season struggles, which it was across the board. It was the offensive line. It was B-Rob. That was a real thing. I'm not sure if he ever fully had a chance to really heal up from his injury. He didn't miss a lot of time, if you recall. So, again, not to make any excuses for him. He missed stuff. The line blocking in front of him wasn't great, but he could have done more with less. That's not who he is. But you put some space in front of him, and he can make some things happen. And like you said, wide receiver 2 can open up the field to help the run game out, to take a defender out of the box, to open up the field, to give Terry more advantageous looks, more space to operate. I agree with you, Stephen Dent. Malachi Malik, excuse me. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, you may have already talked about this, but what do you think about Max Crosby if we can't get Myles Garrett? I think he's in a very similar spot to Myles Garrett, where the Raiders aren't interested in trading him. They got a whole new front office, and I don't think that front office is interested necessarily now. Granted, it's a little bit different than Cleveland's situation, where their GM, head coach, all of those guys have already been, you know, with Myles Garrett for years, and they're not interested in moving him. Max Crosby is one of the few guys in Vegas that holds any real value. And if you're trying to jumpstart turning the Raiders around and you feel like the draft is the way to do that, trading Max Crosby may be the best way to maximize the few assets that you have on your roster. But again, if you're trying to win in Vegas, trading Max Crosby is counterintuitive to that. So again, as a new GM coming in, what is your agenda? Do you want to build this thing your way with your guys and getting rid of Max Crosby and getting draft capital for him? Is that the best way to go about that? Or are you more so inclined to say, no, we're going to try to turn this thing around and we're going to use the talent that we have to help us win ball games, to try to attract talent here to Vegas? I look at Max Crosby as a guy that I don't think the Raiders are interested in trading at this moment. But I'd tell you this. I think he has a better shot of being traded than that of Myles Garrett right now. I'll tell you that much. I don't think it's very much. Like Myles Garrett has a 1% chance of being traded, and Max Crosby has a 10% chance, or Myles Garrett has a 5% chance of being traded, and Max Crosby is at 10, right? 12. It's like not that much of a difference, but it's a difference nonetheless. I don't think what I'm telling you is I don't expect either one of them to be traded, but I'd be definitely interested in Max Crosby for sure. He is the equivalent of Jalen Carter defensively. A nonstop motor, a guy that pushes the envelope, that crosses the line quite often. And you'll be pissed off because every now and again he'll pick up a personal foul penalty for a late hit on a quarterback or some stupid shit that he shouldn't have done. But he's so dynamic that you're willing to forgive him for his, sins, right? You need guys that are, that go up to that line. You don't want them to cross it, but you need guys that are somewhat crazy. We don't have enough of those dudes. We don't have enough of those guys. So I'd be all in on Max Crosby, but he's not. Now, Max Crosby ain't Myles Garrett. Keep that in mind. There's levels to this shit. He ain't Myles Garrett. That's for damn sure. So also keep that in mind. Don Battery, thank you for being a member of the MOBB for 9 months. Really appreciate you. Who writes, my brother Lou, salute to you. Would you be opposed to spending serious roster capital to bring in another basketball type tight end in free agency, running dual tight end sets? I would love to see them upgrade the athleticism at the tight end position. I just don't think they're going to do that because, again, I talked about how many holes we have on this roster. And again, this isn't like last year where we had like 9 selections in the draft, right? We only have 7. So I think they're going to be a lot more intentional with how they spend those picks. Now, again, the board is going to be what ultimately determines who they select. They're not going in saying, we got to get this, we got to get that, that's how you fail in the draft. You let the board speak to you and you make selections based off of how the players fall in the draft. But I would love for them to acquire an athletically gifted tight end. With Jaden Daniels at quarterback, clearly he loves the tight end position. With the way he made beautiful music with Zach Ertz this year, you get him an athletic tight end that can separate, a guy that can get up the field vertically. It could really spell trouble for NFL defenses trying to defend this offense. But I just don't think it's a luxury that we have right now to spend. Like if an athletic guy ends up being undrafted, I'm all for it, jump all over it. But or guys in the late round, we got 2 7th round picks, I believe. So that's when you take a flyer on a guy like that, a guy that's raw, was a basketball player, throwing his hat in the NFL ring. That's when you throw a 7th round pick at it and you say, hey, let's give it a whirl, right? But to draft a tight end in the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd round almost feels irresponsible at this point. However, if they decide to do that, I'm all on board, right? But knowing that you need edge rusher, knowing that you need defensive line, you could use a defensive tackle, right? I just told you Jonathan Allen's on the last year of his deal, and we don't have any depth at that position. They let go of Fedarian Mathis, right? Like we don't have any real depth at defensive tackle. That's a need too. Edge rusher, defensive tackle, corner, running back. These are all pressing needs. Receiver, adding another receiver to that room is a pressing need. We have needs. So drafting a tight end, if you re-sign Zach Ertz, it doesn't feel like a real need after you spent the 2nd round pick on Ben Sinnott last year. Feel like you probably would have to put that in your back pocket. 7th round pick or undrafted guy you want to add to the mix. And keep in mind, they really like Colson Yankoff too. Don't forget about that. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy, C-Mac, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you so much for your unwavering support and dedication, man. I can't thank you enough for all that you do for the Louie T Network. Once again, thank you for your generosity, my guy, Chris. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always. We have so many other needs before RB1. Edge, cornerback 2, wide receiver 2, tight end, offensive tackle, left and right. Mike linebacker. I could see going into next offseason on offense prioritizing tight end 1 and RB1. Exactly. Depending on how free agency in the draft and the season goes. Thoughts? You hit it right on the head. Like, this is why RB1 is preposterous to me. Talking about this. Unless a guy like falls into your lap that you didn't expect to be there and you're like, we can't pass this guy up. I'm all for it, right? But assuming that this goes the way that we think it's going to go, where we could see 3 running backs come off the board before we even select, it's hard for me to envision us prioritizing replacing a position that doesn't have to be replaced yet. Like, this is the thing. When you're doing what we're doing, and this is what I want you guys to keep in mind, when you're recalibrating as we are right now, it is imperative that you don't create more holes until you fill the ones that are there already, right? You can't afford to go after. And again, I'm all for draft the best player available. If that's RB1, so be it. If that's tight end 1, like if Warren falls to you at 29, he's not. This is an extreme example, but if Warren falls to you for some inexplicable reason in the draft at 29 and you're sitting there, what are you waiting on? Turn the card in and draft a kid, right? Obviously, he's a top 5, he's a top 10 pick, more likely than not. You know, he's got top 5 talent in this draft, but he's a top 10 pick. If he's not top 10, if other teams have pressing needs elsewhere and they go elsewhere, he's top 15 player, no questions asked, right? But again, assuming that the draft goes the way that we expect it to, which, you know, got talents like that don't fall to 29. It might fall to 12. It might fall to 15. It ain't falling to 29, okay? You can't afford to take a tight end 1 if you re-sign Zach Ertz, right? Which is the expectation right now. You can't afford to draft a middle linebacker if you re-sign Bobby Wagner, right? Which is the expectation. You can't afford to draft, you know, RB1 in the first round if you have Brian Robinson Jr. still at running back position. Why do that when you need all of the things that you listed? You need cornerback 2. Again, I think that's a free agency thing. You need wide receiver 2. I think that's a free agency thing. But you need offensive tackle. That could be free agency. That could also be the draft, right? It could also just be Brandon Coleman, excuse me, continuing to try to mature at left tackle. But edge is definitely something that you're not getting in free agency. Not like a difference-making edge rusher. This isn't last year's free agency crop where you had Jonathan Grenard and Danielle Hunter and guys like that available. You're gonna have to find that in the draft, my friends. Cornerback 2. Like, I just think we need another cornerback, period. CB2, CB3, whatever, right? You're 1 injury away. As we know, Marshawn Lattimore, and I'm not speaking this into existence, has had issues staying healthy. You're 1 injury away from somebody needing to hit the field. You want that to be Bobby Price? Ding! Good luck with that. So, yeah, you need another cornerback. We need another receiver, obviously. Whether it's 2 or 3, it better be 3, not 2 in the draft. But I said all of that to say this. Next year is the year where you should be looking for TE1 and RB1, right? Because theoretically, we should have taken care of all these other needs that we have now. Those should be taken care of. And now you can start to turn your attention to some of the things that you didn't have to focus on the year before, because theoretically speaking, you took care of them. Now, again, I understand that Zach Ertz is 34 years old. And I understand that last year was his first time playing in that many games in his NFL career. So now he's a year older. And Zach told us him being out of football practically all of last season allowed him to work and build up his body so that he could play in as many games as he did this past year. He's not going to be afforded the same offseason as he did the last one. So now you got to ask yourself, are you really going to get 17 games from Zach Ertz again? I mean, you barely got it from him this year. If he misses a game, who's stepping up? And these are questions you got to ask yourself. So I get the want to upgrade tight end, and I'm all for it. I just don't think they're going to do it, is what I'm telling you. And I'm not mad at them for that because, again, I said this last year, and people get mad when I say this. You can't fix everything in one offseason. Can't do it. Certain things you're just going to have to say, we'll attend to that next year. Take care of the things that are your most pressing needs now. And then there's certain things you just say, we'll get with that next year. RB1 and tight end 1 should be things that we address next year. I mean, you really hope that you got tight end 1 on the roster already and Ben Sinnott, but the likelihood is that's not the case. But I can't count him out and say that he's not TE1. You know, in year 3, he could be TE1 for all we know. And we might feel damn good about him. He's probably not, but we can't say. So I agree with you, Chris, wholeheartedly. TE1, RB1, those are things you probably should be prioritizing next year. Look for a compliment to B-Rob, because guess what? If you already got the compliment this year, then you draft RB1, now you're set, you know, with the running back position. Now you're set. You got your 2 running backs. Don Battery, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Don Battery, writes, and I can't forget, celebrate the rebirth of good ball in DC. I cooled off, but I'm ready to start talking reckless again. LOL. 5 is like that. Hell. Yeah. It's okay to talk reckless. He's given us a license to talk reckless. He's done that. For a very long time, a lot of you were in hiding. Y'all went inside, man. A lot of y'all left me outside. The only time I was outside during the Rivera era. I told y'all I was staying outside because I was riding for my guy, Sam Howell, right? I stayed outside. It was cold as shit out there. And I was out there, and it wasn't a lot of us out there. It was like maybe 3 or 4 of us out there. Cold as shit. It's okay. The only time I ever went inside was during the Civil War. I wanted no parts of that shit. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Day. I went inside, I locked the doors, I closed my blinds and my curtains, and I didn't care who came knocking at the door. I wasn't opening the bitch up. I didn't want no parts of the Civil War. Just get me a quarterback. They got the right one. Thank God. So I've been outside. I'm going to stay outside. And now we have a license to talk reckless, for sure. Talk your shit, Don Battery. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, hey, Lou, 2 questions. What 3 positions and specific players are you looking at the NFL Combine and why? And what players in free agency scare you or are red flags and why? So I don't know. I don't have specific players yet. I will by the time the Combine gets underway, because the Combine starts next week. So I'll have a list of guys that I'm really intrigued by. I can tell you the positions right offhand because it's positions that we need. So I'll be, hypersensitive to edge rusher, cornerback, and running back in particular. I'm just because of how much affinity I have for the position. I'm always going to be all over the receiver position because it's my favorite position. It's the position that I know the best. So there's certain things that I'm looking for, but move receiver aside because I'm going to look at that position every year. Edge rusher, cornerback, and running back are going to be the 3 positions that I'm going to be all over at the Combine because I know we need it, and I feel like we're going to draft all 3 of those positions at some point in the draft. 2, what players in free agency scare you or are red flags and why? Anybody coming off of an injury scares me, right? So there are gonna be guys that we won't even have an opportunity to get, like Chris Godwin. The Bucks aren't letting him get out of there. He's a Buck, but he would scare me because he's coming off an injury. Even though his game was never predicated on speed, he still scares me, right? Paulson Adebo is a corner that's coming off of a injury. That scares me. Like anybody with lower, if it's a lower extremity injury, I'm nervous about that. Like Carlton Davis is coming off of a season-ending injury, but it was a broken jaw. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. That's a freak injury. That's the same thing Montez Sweat's season was ended with in 2021, right? Like I'm fine with that. I think you got to look at guys that, like for me, Josh Sweat, he's not a red flag for me, but I think someone's going to overpay him based off of what he did in the Super Bowl. He's a good football player, don't get me wrong, but I think you're going to overspend for a guy who isn't a 12, 13, 14 sack a season guy. Like I think somebody's going to overpay him. So you got to be careful about what you're actually getting. You know what I'm saying? Know what you're getting. Understand what it is you're paying for. So yeah, those are the kind of guys that I'd steer clear of. You know how I feel about Nick Westbrook-Akina or Valdez Scantling. Any of those hyphenated name dudes, keep them away from me. But you know, we'll see. You know, we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. It's kind of where I'm at with that. Sean Blake, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Sean writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Sean? I'm a federal employee, work for the VA, and we're going through some layoffs right now. Whew. Talk about it, man. Like, there's a lot of just crazy shit going on right now, man. One of my best friend's husband, he works for the government, and it's just it's tough, man. Right now, it's tough. Says your channel has been an outlet to get my mind off of all the real world BS. Thank you, and I appreciate you. Well, I appreciate you, Sean, and I'm glad that I can be a diversion, if only for a couple of hours a day. You know, it's tough, man. And I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope that everything works out for you and your family and those that you care about. Because I'm pretty sure you work with people that are some of your best friends or people that, you've, forged bonds and relationships with, and they're going through it just like you are. And so I hope all of that works out for all of you guys. But I'm glad I can do my part, man. I'm glad I can do my part. And I really appreciate you, supporting the channel, and I'm glad I could be of some service to you, my friend. So, Black Whisk, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat, Black Whisk. So, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. This was kind of an impromptu show because, again, it was supposed to be Commanders Kings, and we were going to have a very spirited discussion. I got another video for y'all tomorrow. I'm trying to decide if I want to do it live or if I just want to do an upload. We'll figure out what my schedule looks like tomorrow. But I digress. We'll figure it out. But I'm glad y'all was able to join me tonight. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Duncan writes, Magic was a guard for the Lakers who I don't think played in the NFL. How in the heck do you think a basketball player will draft any good NFL players? Hey, do me a favor, Duncan. I know you probably still just absolutely shredded and ripped. I mean, you're absolutely done ski from the Super Bowl celebration, right? You're hammered, bro. Do me a favor. Log off. Okay? Just log off for the night. Let it just kind of let it marinate. Just enjoy the Super Bowl win and come back in about a week or so. You should be sobered up by then. You're plastered, bro. I know it. It's okay. At least there are no misspelled words. At least we could make out the sentence. It doesn't make any sense, but at least we can figure out what you're trying to say. So that's good stuff. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post Live. I appreciate you guys for kicking it with the kid. Look forward to chopping it up with you again tomorrow. I'll see if there's a podcast episode in the works or not, but I definitely have a Command Post video for you guys tomorrow that we'll talk about. And I owe you that because I forgot to talk about it yesterday. So anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I thank you guys for joining me. Look forward to seeing you then. Post up. Take command. Until next time, you guys have a good one. God bless. Good night.